friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Leanne, and my goal is to share bite-sized bits of biblical knowledge, wisdom, and encouragement to help get you through your week and really just help you understand what all this Bible stuff's about anyway. So today we're going to be talking about how we are all susceptible to falling if we stray from God's path. We've heard in real life and even in biblical times stories of people who were just full of wisdom. Like they were people that you look at them and you see their lives and you're like, this person is so smart. How did this thing happen to them? You see them suddenly start falling down a wayward path. How did they get to that point? So we're going to unpack that more from a biblical perspective. Of course, in real life, even people who aren't walking with God are going to stray eventually and fall into a path that leads to really bad places. But we're going to be really focusing more on those of us who think, I know the Bible, maybe a pastor, maybe a leader in your church, or, a leader in, say, the influencer kind of world, someone you've really respected, admired. And you're like, this person is so godly, so full of God's wisdom that they will never fall. And we're going to see a very big story of that with King Solomon and how it actually did happen to him. So let's dive in. So King Solomon was the son of King David and Bathsheba, and he actually reigned as the third king of Israel. When he became king, God appeared to him in a dream and said, hey, ask for me whatever you want. I'm going to give it to you. And you know what he asked for? I mean, this kind of was the beginning of seeing just how smart this guy really was. He asked for wisdom. I mean, think about the whole genie in a bottle concept. If someone said, I'm going to grant you 3 wishes, what are they? I mean, people really tend to ask for dumb things, honestly. But if God were to come to you and said, I am going to answer any prayer, I'm going to give you anything that you want, what is it? Would you ask for wisdom, or would you ask for something that's more fleshly in nature? So King Solomon asked for wisdom. He wanted a discerning heart to help him lead the people of his nation and to be able to determine what was right and wrong. He wanted God's wisdom to take over his heart so that he could lead his nation from a godly manner. And God was so pleased with this that not only did he give him wisdom, he gave him wealth and honor as well. Solomon's wish became legendary. Like people hear about it and they're like, really? I need to go check this out. Like, who does that? This must be a really great, awesome person. And so people from all over came to like see it for themselves, despite all the godly wisdom that he had. His story unfortunately takes a tragic turn. His downfall began with small compromises. And unfortunately, that's how it often happens for us. It's those little small things that we compromise our faith for that then turn into bigger things. And each one of those takes us farther and farther away from the path that God has for us. And more often than not, leads to devastating consequences. For Solomon, his compromises began with the women. Guys, listen up, but ladies, listen up too. Your dating habits matter. Because of his love for women, he eventually found himself paying homage, worshiping other gods, the gods that these other women were following, which is natural. You always hear the thing of whoever you hang out with, that's who you become. In relationships, when you begin dating or marry someone, you are going to by default pick up their bad habits in an effort to be cohesive in the relationship and things like that. And yes, it does go both ways. Like if you're the Christian, hopefully they'll pick up some of yours, but is it worth the risk? In Solomon's case, unfortunately, it was not. As he grew older, his heart turned away from God and he started building altars and deities to worship in place of the one true God. It's a sobering reminder that no matter how strong our faith might seem, we are all vulnerable if we let our guard down and stray away from God's commands. So what can we learn from King Solomon's downfall to help us stay on the right path to God? First and foremost, you must guard your heart. Proverbs 4:23 tells us, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. King Solomon's heart was led astray by his love for these foreign women and the gods that they brought into the relationship. We must be vigilant to guard our hearts from anything that can lead us away from God. Number 2, obedience matters. Solomon's downfall began with those small compromises. and those led to greater and greater disobedience to God. Jesus said, "If you love me, keep my commands." Obedience to God's commands is essential for us to maintain a close relationship with Him. Even the small ones matter. And I would say the small ones probably matter most because those little ones always lead to the bigger ones. Number 3, stay humble. Despite his wisdom, King Solomon became proud and self-reliant. Proverbs 16:18 reminds us this: pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. We must remain humble and dependent on God, recognizing that our wisdom and strengths come from Him alone, nothing else. Number 4, accountability is key. Surround yourself with godly friends who can keep you accountable to God's commands. And they can pull you in if they start seeing you leading down that path to those small compromises. Proverbs 27:17 reminds us this: as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. We need people in our lives to encourage us to stay faithful and obedient to God. And finally, seek God's wisdom daily. King Solomon started his reign with wisdom, literally the wisdom that God gave him directly. But over time, he started relying on his own interpretation and understanding of things. And that's what got him into trouble. James 1:5 encourages us: if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. We must continually seek wisdom from God through prayer and through studying His Word. Those little compromises begin like this: you might be in the Word every single day. You have morning time with God, in His Word, and in prayer. And maybe you take a new job or just some new thing in your life changes that makes it where you aren't prioritizing that time anymore. You're like, well, no, I'll just do it later. And then later never comes. We know that doing it first thing is important. Begins with just one day a week, you miss it. And then the next thing you know, it's 2 or 3 days that you're missing it. Think about going to church. You skip it one weekend because of just some random thing. The more you skip, the more easily you're okay with skipping again. Those little compromises start adding up. Stay connected to God every single day in prayer and in His Word. By skipping this part of it, even one time, you can more easily skip that next time and the next time. And the next thing you know, you are so far from hearing His voice that you are going to be more vulnerable to following something that the enemy puts out there for you because you're not able to discern it because you haven't heard it in so long. Although Solomon's story did end in tragedy, and by the way, if you want to read more about his story in depth specifically, I will link that down in the show notes or in the notes for this video. So be sure to check that out. But although it had a tragic ending, it still offers us hope and encouragement today. Despite his failures, Solomon's failures, God's grace is still evident. It reflects a man who has learned the futility of chasing after worldly pleasures and recognizing the importance of fearing God and keeping His commandments. Like, he messed up and he messed up royally, but he eventually came back to see the error in what he did. And that book, well, think about it. We continue to read that book today. And that is also something that you want to keep in mind, that even when you royally mess up, and you are going to mess up, God is still going to use that event, that thing that you did that messed up royally. He's still going to use it in some way for His glory. So let's take a moment to recognize and examine our own hearts. Are there areas where you have compromised your faith? Have you allowed distractions or worldly pursuits to lead you away from God in some capacity? Ask God to reveal those areas to you and seek His strength in overcoming them. It's never too late to fix what you've broken. Remember, our journey with God is a lifelong process. It's not a destination. We will face challenges and temptations, but we can rest in the assurance that God is with us every step of the way. But we have to stay connected to Him. He is our source of wisdom, our strength, and the grace that He so freely gives us. If you ever find yourself stumbling, just know that God's grace is always there to lift you up and guide you back to His path. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found this encouraging, helpful in some way. If so, give it a thumbs up. Share it with someone. Share it with someone who might need the encouragement because you see them starting to take those small compromises in their life and you know where that's headed. As a good friend, as a friend of God, it is our duty to help keep our Christian brothers and sisters on the right path. So share this video with them. And then maybe through the words that I've spoken here today, they can start kind of seeing where they are starting to make those subtle, small compromises that are going to eventually lead them further and further away from God. How do you stay close to God in the craziness of everything we have going today? I would love to hear your comments. Let me know below, and I will see you all in the next video. God bless and have a great week. Bye-bye.